Okay, we got ourselves another red scene going here. This is after we've deduced that Sei is still alive. Oh, is this going to be her perspective when Reiji and Masaki show up? I'd loved drawing things ever since I was a little girl. So much so, in fact, that back during the war I'd scribble on the walls and floor of our local bomb shelter when we were forced to seek cover from the air raids. They were absolute garbage and quickly erased by the adults, but I still remember those moments quite fondly. However, it wasn't until after the war that I started studying art in earnest. I'd spend every single day at school learning art techniques and drawing things. We used a Technicolor art book as our textbook. I would stare at it for hours while reproducing one painting after the next. First, I thought my work came out great. However, my teacher critiqued my paintings as having no soul behind them. What in the world is soul? Soul bad guy. That's a lot of girl and shell. I went to an art museum featuring a wide variety of artwork in hopes of finding an answer to that question. It was there that I had my first encounter with Shinzo Mamiya's artwork. Every last inch of his painting was striking in how vibrant and unpretentious they looked. It was only after seeing them that I had any semblance of what it meant for a painting to have soul in it. And so, it was after said visit that I began reproducing Shinzo Mamiya's paintings around the clock. I would copy his use of color, brushstrokes, and atmosphere. Eventually, I became so good that I could perfectly reproduce Shinzo Mamiya's works. But it wasn't simply limited to his art. I could recreate just about any painting I'd studied for long enough. It was after learning art restoration techniques that I managed to reproduce the apparent age of the paintings as well. And that caught the eye of Sasakura, the owner of an art gallery near my local train station. He told me that he wanted to put my restoration talents to good use. Thus, I started working for him while still attending university, since I'd always wanted to be a part of the art world. But as there wasn't much of a market for art restorations, I instead made copies of other paintings as per Sasakura's suggestion. Back then, I still had no idea what he was using my recreations for. I would reproduce the paintings by studying art books, touring art galleries, and reading the artists' autobiographies. But no matter how accurately I recreated the paintings, I never felt any soul behind them. The reason why was obvious, of course, because they weren't my paintings. It was impossible to impart my soul into someone else's vessel. That was a lesson I'd learned the hard way. However, I'd given up on making my own paintings long before then, hence why I'd grown so fixated on creating perfect imitations instead. In those days, I devoted myself to discovering just how accurately I could reproduce others' works. I was determined to recreate every last detail, from the smallest strokes of the brush to even the drips of paint that had been spattered on the painting. And since I'd always been the meticulous sort, I even went so far as to incorporate the lints that had gotten stuck to the canvas. By that point, they ceased to be copies and became perfect forgeries instead. And after commissioning them for me, Sasakura would sell them behind closed doors. He never had trouble finding buyers. Even those who knew they were forgeries likely still found some use for them as replicas to protect the originals. Sasakura's patrons were members of the seedy underbelly of society. They were individuals who would smuggle the counterfeits out of the country and sell them at auctions overseas. However, I felt no pangs of conscience even when I finally discovered the truth. If anything, I was elated that there were those who found value in my work. It was all so twisted, but perhaps that was only to be expected when I showed so little interest in the world and the people who populated it to begin with. Eventually, Sasakura became the first man I ever slept with. Nothing in particular brought it on. One thing simply led to another. This one time I stayed over at the gallery to work on a painting. Sasakura constantly whispered sweet nothings into my ear about how he loved me. I didn't feel the same about him, not in the slightest. However, I was curious to see if I could recreate a reproduction of my own body. Thus, I got pregnant and secluded myself away at Sasakura's home in Chopu under the pretense I had left Japan to study abroad. It was during those serene days that a certain incident took Tokyo by storm. Not only was Shinzo Mamiya arrested, but the corpses of women remodeled into Girl and Shell were discovered in his home and art studio. I'd seen Girl and Shell many a time. Furthermore, I'd even tried reproducing the painting, only to give it up as a gargantuan undertaking beyond me. Not due to its physical size or anything else like that, but because of the staggering presence that the painting possessed, almost like it was alive. Nowhere else could you find a painting with more soul behind it. But once the truth about it came out, I finally realized why it was that I'd never been able to replicate it. It was because the original Girl and Shell statue was the soul of that painting. And so I decided to study sculpting. Fortunately, I had nothing but time on my hands. I'd need clay and create statues of my own. They even included miniature versions of Rodin's The Thinker. Though that said, they were empty husks with absolutely no soul behind them. I also made a painting of my own, one depicting an armless angel. I unconsciously modeled it off of Shinzo Mamiya's style. Even I found that bizarre in hindsight, considering that he'd never made a piece like that. This painting had no soul behind it either, for its soul was located somewhere else entirely. Thus, when she died, the painting finally acquired its soul. At first, it all had just been a little prank. I simply wondered how many people would notice if I snuck my angel painting among Shinzo Mamiya's works. Ultimately, the painting was dubbed Exile of Paradise and presented to the public as a lost piece of his. It was a few days later that she died. When I saw her body, I somehow got it in my head that I had everything I needed to complete Exile of Paradise. Girl and Shell had been two parts of a whole, the painting and the sculpture. So with that in mind, I had figured that Exile of Paradise needed a statue as well. It's what Shinzo Mamiya would have done, I convinced myself. Thus I made my Exile of Paradise statue. However, in a sense, it became the real one. And if Exile of Paradise was a counterfeit, then its statue deserved counterfeits as well. Thus I made two counterfeit statues. I'd patted myself on the back after finishing them both, telling myself that I'd made masterpieces. But I had been wrong, for neither had any soul. It finally dawned on me that I should have turned myself into a statue in order to create the most authentic counterfeit of them all, since I was the one at the heart of the original Exile of Paradise. By this point, I'd already finished the angel wings needed for the statue. Oh. She was getting ready to... How was she going to do it to herself? However, I would need to keep my right arm until the bitter end in order to complete my work. Maybe I can pull it off with the pruning shears I used the first time. I decided to start with my left arm. Thus, I rolled up my sleeve, exposing my pale and slender flesh. So that's what she was in the middle of when Reiji and Masaki found her. I'd never be able to paint again if I lost it. Still, I didn't care. After all, I was merely a pretender who was incapable of producing anything but shams, and I'd never be anything more than that. I grabbed a knife and pressed it against my arm. I knew exactly how much strength I needed to cleave through my flesh, and yet my hand refused to move. So I grabbed the back of the chair with my left hand, closed my eyes, and drew back my right hand. My arm ached like it had been set on fire. I opened my eyes and nervously stole a glance at my left arm. However, all I saw was a thin red line. Something so puny hurt that much? Yeah. No, I mustn't be daunted. I have to do this. After all, I could never become the angel from Exile of Paradise unless I got rid of it. I tried cutting off my arm again, and again, and again, and again. However, the pain stayed my hand each time. I wept, not from the pain, but rather the vexation of finding pain this measly unbearable. I sobbed as I attempted to rid myself of my arm over and over. Knock, knock. Okay, so apparently this is a brand new... excuse me. Apparently this is a brand new choice. Okay, this is when they're going to try to arrest Chie. Gotcha. Alright, we're going too. Wasn't like me to just sit out of this. Yes.
霞ヶ関から浜松町まで5キロもない。30キロで走っても10分で着く。
We don't have time to debate the matter. Thus I seized Masaki by the collar and madly dashed out of CID Section 1's offices. I sped over to Takashiba Pier with all the desperation of a driver who was neck and neck for first place on the last lap of a race. There I hit the brakes and came to a halt among the squad cars trailing behind me. A giant ship was visible over a small building. A squad of officers darted ahead of Yaginuma's order. I checked my watch. It read 3:55 p.m. She must already be on board by now. Damn it, how are we going to get her off the ship? I handed Masaki my things and rushed toward the ship with him. There I found the cops engaged in a heated dispute with the harbor official at the pier. Harbor official caved and hurried into the boat.
令状がなければ無理だろう。自主的に彼女から出てきてもらわん。
Question is, will she? The boat's steam whistle rang. Shit, it's 4 p.m. on the dot. Fortunately, however, the ship still hadn't cast away the gangway connecting it to the shore. Probably had Yaginuma and his men's presence to thank for that. Persistence to thank for that. Just then I saw someone appear on the deck.
Kuboi-san!
Hi! You don't look too happy to see us. Masaki cried out to her. Chie looked down at us from the gunwale.
君に重要なことを伝えに来た。
Masaki beckoned to her as I explained. Come on, let's just take a second.
分かっているさ。だが、これを見てもそう言えるかな。
Reaching into the bag of evidence Masaki had brought out and showed Chie the damning proof of her crime. とない。Oh, you know what it is. Oh, you know what it is. You don't play silly with me, girl.
現場に落ちていた包丁ですよ。刺身。
Yeah. Yeah.
柳葉包丁ですね。
Which reminds
そうい
me,
えば、久保井さん。
I was on the right track. I was sure
よ
of it.
く使い込まれたいい包丁です。しっかり製造元の名も入っていますし。
購入者の名簿は今取り寄せている最中です。久保井という名があればほぼ決まりでしょうね。
降りてきていただけますか。
Chie vanished from the gunwale. Shortly thereafter, she appeared at the other end of the
お
gangway.
兄さん、
事情はおおよそ察しているよ。ただ、殺してはいけなかった。
我慢がならなかったのです。
Chie descended the gangway, her luggage in hand. Harbor official gave the signal for the ship to set sail, almost as if he'd been waiting for this very moment.
久保井さん、
I held my hand out to Masuki.
仇を討とうという気持ちはよくわかる。
もう少しで自由になれたのです。
Chie stared at the ship as it pulled away from the wharf.
自由ではないさ。もう二度と帰ってこられなくなるところだった。
それでも構わないのです。
Deep down, I was dying to tell her the truth. But if she learned that everything she'd done had been for naught, she would have rejoiced, raged, and despaired all at once. I couldn't bear to watch that happen before my very eyes.
ゆかりちゃんに
Chie hung her head as she made that
わ
request.
かった。
It would kill me inside to break Yukari's heart. I had to honor Chie's request.
行きましょうか。
Two cops flanked Chie once Aginuma gave the
ヤ
order.
ギ沼、お前から伝えておいてくれないか。
分かっていますよ。
Aginuma gave a carefree wave before getting back into his squad
俺
car.
たちも行くか。
ええ。時坂さん、
What's good?
ゆかりさんには自分から伝えますよ。
いや、俺が言う。そう約束したからな。
I got in the car after shaking my head. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is something new. Okay. The sun had already set by the time we returned to the MPD. Oh, because we haven't. Yeah, no, we haven't arrested Sei by this point. So this is probably going to be interrogating Chie. Oh no, we have arrested Sei by this point. Oh yeah, of course we did. Because that was when she was trying to saw her arm off in the fucking studio. Sei got straight down to brass tacks as soon as she took her seat.
あなたの容疑が晴れたことを伝えに来たんですよ。
私の容疑。
笹倉啓太殺害に関して、あなたの関与はなかったと判明しました。
そう。
Sei's countenance didn't change in the slightest. She showed not even a twinge of relief to learn her name had been cleared. Though maybe that was only natural, since it wasn't like I'd told her she'd been acquitted of everything.
久保一恵が犯行を自供しました。
Sei gasped. She looked truly rattled for the first time since we'd met.
彼女はあなたが笹倉に殺されたと思い込み、
まさか。
あなたの立ち回りによって無用の罪を犯した人がいるんです。
Sei started quivering.
あなたが黙秘を続けることによって他の人にも影響があるかもしれない。
Yagama gasped at Sei's abrupt confession, but I simply shook my head.
それは認められません。あなたは彼女をかばおうとしているだけだ。
なぜですか？私には笹倉を殺すはっきりとした理由があります。
では他の二人を殺害したことにもれっきとした理由があるのですか？あなたの都合ではなく、あの二人でなくてはいけない理由が。
Sei bit her lip.
この際、あなたの都合でも構いません。
それは。
あなたの目的とは、あの天使を作ることですよね。
Sei had been ensnared by an obsessive need to sculpt those angels. But why? Just what was it about the painting that drove her to such lengths?
それはそれは。
Oh, hello. Makoto Orochiki chuckled.
間宮心臓の作品に一番触れていたはずのマリスですら見抜けないとは
素晴らしい才能ですね。
Oshi spoke, no, monologued at length, perhaps because this was a topic with absolutely no ties to him for a change. Have I seen this?
それは皆さんお困りでしょう。贋物の処分もできませんからね。
I feel like I've seen
一方
this.
処分した後
Have I
で
seen this?
そちらが神仏であれば大問題でしょうから。
そんなのは貴様が心配することではない。
I have not seen this, okay. Oshi laughed at Yaginuma's flagrant dismissal.
すり替えられていないという証拠があるのですか。現に未発表作は盗まれたのでしょう。警備体制の不備を責めているわけではありませんよ。木と紙でできた日本家屋など破ることはとても簡単なのですよ。
黙れ。
これは申し訳ありません。無関係な話を。どちらの絵も警察で保管されたらいかがです。
貴様に言われるまでもない。
ほう、すでに手配済みでしたか。これは失礼いたしました。
当然だ。
Yaginuma shoved some documents right into Oroshiki's face.
おお、送検ですか。
No, I have
今頃に
seen
なっ
this.
てようやく。
It's saying I haven't
通常
seen
な
this,
ら
but I
ば
feel like
検
I
察
have
への
seen
装
this.
置は48時間以内のは
Is
ず
it
です
saying I
が。
haven't seen this simply because this is
2
now
年かかり
the
ましたか。
point where we've arrested Chie? Oroshiki chuckled.
いや、あなたたちの事情は十分承知していますとも。
ろくに証言をしたことなどなかっただろうが。
確かにほとんど話すことはありませんでしたね。それはあなたたちの聞くことが取るに足らないことで、私は偏屈ですが医者ですからね。患者からの質問には答えますよ。
黙れ。
そういえば朽木病理学研究所にいた時にお姉さん
Oh.
柳沼恵里子
No,
さ
I
んに
have
お会
not
いし
seen
ましたよ。
this. All of a sudden, Orochi changed the subject as though he were making mere chit chat. Yaginuma couldn't afford to interrupt his ramblings, however.
彼女の意識が戻らないことについて以前朽木所長と議論したことがあります。
Suddenly, Orochi shook his head.
所長は保存療法を選択しました。故にそのまま眠り続けているのです。
Okay, and that's how Yaginuma becomes convinced that Orochi can help her. He's like, yeah, no, I suggested there was a treatment where there was a very good chance she'd survive, but the director decided not to do it. But you know, I knew there was a way to do it. He's like, you know there's a way.
何が言いたい。
Irritated as he was, Yaginuma urged Orochi on.
私ならば彼女の意識を取り戻せます。
I'm just saying, I could wake her up. Orochi stared at Yaginuma dead in the eye.
だからなんだと言うんだ。
Don't listen to him. We mustn't let him take control of the conversation. Yet despite those protests from his brain, Yaginuma attempted to keep the conversation going.
何？私はただ私にできることを話しているだけで
Oh,
す
I
よ。
mean nothing by it. Just, you know, something you should keep in mind. Orochi smiled.
しかし残念かな。今の私には彼女を救う手立てがないのです。
その通りだな。
Yaginuma tapped the table with his finger.
あなたはそれでよろしいのですか？彼女を救うことができるのに手を打たず。
無駄なことはやめるんだな。脱獄を企てているのだろうが。
その経歴とてお姉さんのためだったのではありませんか？
The rhythmical tapping on the table stopped.
こういう時に使わずして何のための権力ですか？いや、もちろんあなたの経歴に傷をつけさせるつもりは一切ありません。
何をバカな。
Yaginuma knew Orochi's tricks inside and out. He knew the man was trying to play him. He knew he had no reason to even entertain the deranged serial killer. And yet...
お姉さんとお話をしたくはないのですか？
The enticement of such an offer was far too tempting. Such an outcome would be a literal dream come true for him, and this man was the only one talented enough to make it a reality.
私はあなたの助けになりたいのですよ。
And thus, against all better judgment, Yaginuma felt he had no choice but to urge this devil in the guise of a man to continue. Okay. Okay. I see. Oh no, this is also. Oh, yeah, this is going to be unread because this is where Reiji tells Yukari what happened. Parked the car in my driveway and closed my eyes for a bit. I really don't want to do this. Still, I've got a promise to keep. I opened the car door, sending a gust of frigid air rushing inside. If I hadn't, I feared I would have never gotten out of the car. I entered the living room to find Yukari looking up at
ただ
me.
いま。
おかえりなさいませ。
Suddenly, she showed me an envelope.
それは
これは知恵からの手紙です。
I hardened my heart in response.
何が書いてあったんだ。
それがごめんなさいとだけ。先ほども正木さんからお電話がありましたし。
ああ、久保井さんは殺人容疑で逮捕された。
Yukari's eyes widened.
ですが
My sister's voice was trembling.
出港前に証拠が揃った。さすがに高飛びを許すわけにはいかない。
そうでしょうね。
Yukari hung her head, shoulders quivering.
どうして
I know, sweetie, I
来
know.
るのでしょうか。
It makes me feel so fucking bad. Every time she makes a new friend, something happens. Either they die or they're killers. Like, every fucking time. And that's the thing, like, you know, even in the ending where she, like, ends up getting close with Mosky, right? It's like, even though Mosky's kind of atoned and redeemed himself, he's also technically a killer. Oh, sweet, sweet Yukari, I'm so sorry. Aww.
まったくだ。
I tousled Yukari's hair. She'd done absolutely nothing to deserve any of this, yet the world saw fit to keep tormenting her all the same.
撫でてくれるなんて久しぶりですね。
Yeah, well, you fucking earned it this time.
なんとなくだよ。
I ruffled her hair some more, mussing it up a bit.
もうやめてください。
お前は悪くないさ。悪いのは
兄さんは悪くありませんよ。
Yukari forced a smile despite her
だっ
sorrow.
て兄さんは被害に遭われた方の無念を晴らそうとしていらっしゃるではないですか。
Wish I could say that's true. Unfortunately, it wasn't a sense of justice or a need to do good that drove me. Simply did it because I knew no other trade in life. However, I couldn't bring myself to tell Yukari that. God, I'm such a
で
coward.
きることならば私もそのようになりたいです。
I ruffled her hair a bit more aggressively in response.
俺のようにはなるなよ。
Not in a million years did I want her to become a slave to obsession as I
お
had.
前まで俺みたいなぐうたらになったら
心配しなくともそうはなりませんよ。
だよな。
Yukari finally had her smile back.
腹減ったな。
申し訳ありません。
Yukari went to the kitchen. I sighed, knowing we'd need to have a more thorough conversation about Chie later. Nah, that was a sweet little moment. Unfortunate, but sweet. Ooh. The scene where Yagino returns to his apartment. He hung up his coat and suit on hangers, removed his tie, and took off his shirt. This is before the jailbreak, though. He was desperately craving a shower after an exhausting day at the MPD. Yagino went to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and quenched his thirst. He then used what was left in the glass to water giant potted plants in the corners of his apartment. I was gonna say, you better not show me naked Yaginuma. I don't want to see that. After a shower, Yaginuma donned a bathrobe and returned to the living room while drying his hair. There he opened a wine bottle he'd taken from the kitchen and poured himself a glass. Of course you're a fucking wine mom. He took a seat on the sofa and sipped from his glass. Man, Yaginuma really would be the type to wrap himself up in a bathrobe and sip on a glass of wine. Like, hey, I'm not all about, you know, like traditional masculinity and all that shit. I'm not saying you have to fucking buy into that shit, but like he just really would be the guy. Like that's not the like shit you typically assume like would be manly, right? And even though Yagina was kind of never really giving off manly vibes, especially for like the 50s, right? It's just like seeing this CG right here and be like, yeah, no, that is exactly how Yagina would be. He'd be such an uptight, sarcastic jackass at work, just be a fucking pompous dick to Eddie and everyone, and then he comes home, wraps himself up in a bathrobe, and pours himself a big glass of wine. Like a fucking wine mom. Oh my god. Jesus. Drink some whiskey, pussy. Yaginuma sighed. He was exhausted from working around the clock recently. However, there's still one more major task looming ahead. Once that was over, Yaginuma's eyes fell upon a picture frame sitting on an end table. Within it was a black and white photograph taken before the war. This was the only so-called family photo he had left. It depicted a young Ryoichi Yaginuma with his older sister, Eriko. A scene from back when he'd still been happy.
姉さん
Yaginuma set down his wine glass, picked up the photo. He would do anything if it meant even the smallest chance of seeing her smile again, including selling his soul to the devil. Oh? Okay, this is definitely a new transition scene. The events of that day came back to me. It was a night when we had nothing but the moonlight illuminating us. Oh. We panted in unison, our bodies connected as one. It was cold outside, but none of that bothered us. Two of us simply basked in each other's warmth, hand in hand. We firmly intertwined one's fingers to tell ourselves this wasn't a dream. So they did actually cross the line at one point. Okay. I wrapped my arms tight around her. Also, she couldn't get away, so that I wouldn't let her get away. For as long as I had her, I needed nothing else. We cried out in chorus as we climaxed.
Chie.
I gripped her hand even tighter when she called my name. Technically, she didn't call your name. Wait, are we seeing this from Sei's or Chie's point of view? I needed her more than anyone else in the world. Honestly, probably Chie's point of view. So I don't think Sei's focus is more so on the art than the woman. We kissed each other. I gave in to the sensation of her warm, supple lips against mine. Eventually, we quietly separated. I clung to Miss Maizono even tighter, not wanting her to leave. Okay, so this is from Chie's point of view. So Chie thought the world of it, but it really wasn't much for Sei.
甘えん坊さんね。
Miss Maizono ruffled my hair. My heart soared with utmost bliss. She left me wanting even more from her. I buried my face in her chest and listened to her heartbeat. I was racing like mad, and I suspected mine was exactly the same, if not worse.
ねえ先生何お願いがあるのです
I played with her hair as I asked that question. It was something I'd been considering for a while. Finger in the butt.
今度の絵のモデル先生にお願いしてもいいですか私
Ah, okay.
今考えているものが先生にぴったりなのです
I knew if I was going to ask her, this would be my best chance.
でも私なんて地味だしそんなに見どころもない
She says to the woman who fucked her.
そんなことないのです
Well, I'm not very attractive, even though clearly someone just slept with you and they really wanted to at that. I shook my head. I knew that if there was anyone in the world who could bring out her beauty, it was me.
お願いします先生イタリアに行く前に先生を描きたいのです
So at this point,
そうだったわね
Miss Maizono caressed my cheek.
じゃあ一度だけどんなのを描くつもりなのかしらですねマリア様なのですこうイエス様を抱いているか
Made some gestures to give her a better idea of what I had in mind.
こうかしら
Miss Maizono rose to her feet, covered up her nude form in sheets, and posed against the wall.
はいそうなのです
I nodded over and over as I looked for something to draw with.
そんなに慌てなくても私は逃げはしないわよそれは分かっているのですがどうも興奮しちゃうのです落ち着きなさい完成するまで付き合ってあげるからありがとうございます
I set some drawing paper against the drawing board. This was Miss Maizono's apartment, so of course there were plenty of things I could use within arm's reach. Miss Maizono just stood there quietly, being patient with me. Though we were physically apart, I felt even more connected to her than when we were together. For I wanted to capture each and every little thing I loved so much about her in this painting. You ever just sleep with someone and then immediately go, I need to draw you? So relatable. Oh? Something new? Went to the MPD, marched straight for Yaginama's desk. Says it's unread.
来ましたか
What's up? Yaginama set down his paperwork and rose from his chair.
呼び出したのはお前だろうに。
He was the one who called me this morning and told me to get over to MPD HQ.
何の用だ
That's why I wanted to cut the bullshit and get straight down to business.
久保井千恵についてですよ
真実まさかお
Why
前
has it gotta be
前園生が生
we?
きていることをまだ伝えていなかったのか
Why has it gotta be we? I don't think I didn't catch that. You said we. I told you to do it, so I wouldn't have to. Don't drag me into this, you dick.
その方が捜査も有利に働きますからね
Man, can't believe I ever thought this guy wasn't as twisted as he used to be.
しかし送検してしまった以上いつまでも隠し通すわけにはいきませんから
So So now that it'll no longer impede my work, I'll do it so I don't care if it impedes other people's work.
だったら伝えればいいだろうが。
Don't see why you need me for this.
捜査に深く関わっていたのは先輩ですからね。そちらから話してもらうのが妥当でしょう。
This man said, hey, I can do it, you tell her. He's like, alright, I can do that. And then a few days later, anyway, I think you'd be better for it, so yeah, you go ahead and do it. Fucking dick. Proper my ass. You're just dumping the job on my shoulders so you think it's too much of a pain to be bothered.
とにかくよろしく頼みましたよ。
待てよ、ヤギ沼。
Telling Chie say my Zona was alive sounded good and all, but I was supposed to drop the bombshell that her beloved mentor was a murderer as well.
そちらの判断に任せます。
分かった。
Real bureaucrat this guy is. Waited a while in the interrogation room for Chie to show up. Though her case had been transferred to the prosecutor's office, she was currently still in custody here at the MPD's holding cells. It was more convenient to keep suspects here rather than some faraway prison, since the prosecutor's office was pretty close. Hence why I could still visit her and say my Zono. Just then the door opened and Chie Kuboi came in, escorted by a policewoman. Chie gasped when she saw me.
Yeah, 久保井さん。
I greeted her casually in hopes of putting her at as much ease as possible.
どうも
Chie bowed and took a seat in the opposing chair.
風邪などはひいていないかい？
大丈夫なのです。
それはよかった。
Chie refused to look me in the eye, so I tried to get a good gander at her face. What I found was a visage devoid of any hopes or dreams. No surprise there. Anyone would feel the same after getting arrested and ending up in a drab hell like this.
君に伝えなければならないことがある。
Chie shivered when she heard me speak.
まずは、君が行ったことが無駄になったということだ。
She looked up at me in confusion.
前園聖は生きているよ。君の敵討ちは意味がなかったんだ。
Now, how will she react knowing that she needn't have killed Sasakura at all?
よかった。
Chie's eyes widened and welled with tears.
よかったです。
Her body shuddered with heavy sobs. So she doesn't even care that she killed Sasakura, huh? Guess that goes to show how much Guess that goes to show just how much she loves Seimai Zono. That said, it was the prosecution's job to determine how guilty she felt about what she'd done, not mine. Then again, this wasn't part of my job description either.
なんだい？
先生。
Figured that's what she was going to ask.
それは俺の一存では決められないな。
Allowing two prisoners to meet was probably all but impossible, after all.
よろしくお願い。
Chie bowed until her head was on the table.
じゃあ
それはまだ分かっていない。
I decided to be honest with her.
私が笹倉さんを
いや、そうじゃない。
It wasn't exactly innocent either. Still, I wondered how Chie would react to hearing that she'd killed someone who had nothing to do with the murders. Should I really tell her? Suddenly Chie blanched as if my hesitation had revealed everything.
まさか先生が。
ああ、おそらくね。
Lying would have been even worse at this point.
君がしたことについて。
そう。
Chie hung her head.
君がしでかしたことは到底許されるものではない。
分かっているの。
Chie's hands curled into fists atop her lap for a long time after that. Returned to CID Section 1 after finishing with Chie in the interrogation room. Yaginuma was no longer there. Of course he wasn't. Instead...
おや、珍しいところだ。
Hey, what's good? How you doing, sexy? I actually have not seen you at all today. In the fucking hour and a half I've been recording, I haven't seen you once. This is bullshit. Like, I guess I've seen you briefly when I'm like skipping through shit I've already seen, but damn, long time no see. How you doing? Shit.
それはこっちのセリフですよ、綿貫先生。
I found Kaede Watanuki in the reception area.
何か
Damn
やっ
right
た
you
んです
did.
か？
I made a little joke at her expense.
あいにく総一に捕まるようなことはしていないよ。
Kaede shrugged. That implied she'd done shit that would have gotten her picked up by Section 2, the white-collar crimes department of CID.
まあ、ここにいる理由は総一とあまり関係ないのだがね。とある被疑者が起訴できるか否かを判断しに来たのさ。
Oh, you
茅原さんですか？
Her insinuations brought the case I'd been on 2 months ago to mind.
その質問に答えるわけにはいかないな。何せまだ起訴前の案件なのでね。
Kinda shrugged again.
そもそも私は警察官でも検察官でも弁護士でもない。
分かっています。
ま、悪いようにはしないから安心してない。
よろしくお願いします。
That was all I could think to say.
ああ、そうだった。
まさきですか？
今日は水曜だろう。本来は彼の診察があったのだが、こちらの要件のためできなかったからね。
Oh, we got something new? Kyoko. Sun had long since set by the time Ozmi returned to Moonworld, the cramped alleys in the vicinity already reeking of booze.
いらっしゃい。
Kyoko was there to greet him as per routine. She silently served him coffee after he took a seat at the
どうだっ
counter.
た？
Kyoko eyed the stack of papers Ozmi had piled onto the
い
counter.
くつか見てきたがどこも遠くてな。せめて駅から近ければいいんだが。
Most of the properties he'd viewed today were boarding houses down in
結
Shitamachi.
構狭いのね。
Kyoko nodded when she picked up one of the papers and studied the floor plan it depicted.
寝られる場所さえ。
Ozmi wasn't trying to play it cool either. That was genuinely all he wanted. After all, it wasn't like he was planning to do much there apart from hitting the hay for the night before taking off for work the next thing in the morning.
足立区、北区、練馬区、杉並区なんて近くていいんじゃない？
だが0時が近くてな。
あらいいじゃない。一緒にお仕事だったりす
Put
る
me
んで
too
し
close to
ょ？
the rage. Kyoko smiled
そんな
innocently.
こと言われてもな。
Ozmi scratched his head.
あら、武蔵野の物件もあるじゃない。
Kyoko held up one of the papers she found while leafing through the stack.
ああいやそれは。
中町、三鷹駅の方ね。それでもここからだって近いし。
すぐ近くの不動産屋に行ったら渡されたんだ。狭くていいって言ったのによ。
Ozmi hastily tried to salvage the
こ
situation.
こにはしないの？
しねえよ。
Ozmi frantically looked away and chugged his coffee. Couldn't even entertain such an offer. It would have been one thing if he'd been able to laugh it off, but Ozmi wasn't equipped to do that.
ここの2階。荷物くらいなら置けるわよ。
However, Kyoko remained ignorant of his internal torment.
いや迷惑はかけら。
He'd just stay at the police dorms for the time being. That suited his purposes just fine. Couldn't have cared less about the inevitable complaints his decision would provoke from his fellow dorm mates. He just let the housemaster take them. But above all else, the prospect of living with Kyoko was simply beyond Ozmi's capabilities for the time being. Oh, Ozmi, you're so silly.